Welcome to the First Seventh-day Adventist Church of Paterson. We are so glad you have decided to visit us today. Our church is a community of believers who come together to worship God and learn from His Word. We believe in the power of prayer and the importance of fellowship. Our goal is to create a warm and welcoming environment where everyone feels like they are part of our family. We have a variety of programs and activities for people of all ages, including Sabbath school classes for children, youth groups, and Bible studies for adults. We also have a vibrant music program and a strong emphasis on evangelism and community outreach. We hope that as you worship with us today, you can experience the joy and love of God in a supportive and uplifting community. If you have any questions or would like more information about our church, please feel free to contact Pastor Dr. Richard P. Campbell at 973-279-6256. We look forward to getting to know you and welcoming you into our family.
Mic 1, 2, 3. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 11, 12. Let's sit in the middle, please.
Happy Sabbath and good afternoon, everybody.
For those of you who know that people who would benefit from this, you can call them, tell them to come, or it's better in person. But if they can't come, then there's a link that you can get from our YouTube channel and send it.
All right. Before we begin, let us pray. Most righteous eternal God, I want to thank you for the morning that we have had today, dear God. I want to thank you for the gift of communion, dear God, so that we can be cleansed, dear God, and be renewed. As we're about to go into this very informative and important session, dear God, I ask that we may learn something, I ask that we may benefit from what is going to happen, and that we will do this in a great manner. In your name I pray. Amen. Oh, church, do you love Jesus? Oh,
yes, I love Jesus.
Are you sure you love Jesus?
I'm sure I love Jesus.
And why do you love Jesus?
Why
Love Jesus because he first loved. That's the reason we all have to love him. Oh, how I love Jesus. And oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. Believers, do you love Jesus?
Oh, yes, I love Jesus.
Are you sure you love Jesus?
I'm sure I love Jesus.
And why do you love Jesus?
Why I love Jesus.
Because he first loved. That's the reason we all have to love him. Oh, how I love Jesus. And oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. Oh, ladies, do you love Jesus?
Oh, yes, I love Jesus.
Are you sure you love Jesus?
I'm sure I love Jesus.
And why do you love Jesus?
Yes, why I love Jesus.
Because he first loved. That's the reason we all have to love him. Oh, how I love Jesus. And oh, how I love Jesus. Oh, how I love Jesus. Because he first loved me. Oh, men, do you love Jesus? Oh, yes, we love Jesus. Are you sure you love Jesus? Come on, man. And why do you love Jesus? I love Jesus because he first loved. That's the reason we all have to love him. Oh, how I love Jesus. And oh, how I love. Oh, how I love Jesus because he first loves me. Amen. There's this one I've been wanting to sing for a couple of weeks, but I can't remember it so fully, so you guys are going to have to help me. It says, lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right, stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right, lean forward. So we got it now, right? So that means we're going to do the actions, right? All right, let's do it together. Ready? Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right, stand up, sit. We're not ready. We're going to have to start over. We're going to have to start over. Let's do it again. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right, stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right, lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right, stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right, and love lifted me. Love lifted me when nothing else could have. Love lifted, hallelujah, love lifted me. Love lifted me when nothing else could have. Love lifted me. One more time, faster. Ready? Ready? Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Lean forward, lean backward, to the left, to the right. Stand up, sit down, to the left, to the right. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could have. Love lifted me. Hallelujah. Love lifted me. Love lifted me. When nothing else could have. Love. Watch me, watch me. Lifted me. All right. Good job.
All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this exciting and informative session. We're grateful that you have come, and for those of you who are watching via YouTube or Facebook, we welcome you to the best church on God's green earth, and we are doing something that will transform your life or the life of somebody you know, or you'll get information to navigate your way through these United States. Amen? What we'll be doing here today, we're doing a presentation. Attorney Al Walters will come after I'm finished, and she will introduce our guests, and our guests will present. You can have your questions identified in two ways. One, you can write them. We'll give you those papers if you so desire, and they'll be read. Or you can, at the time as the presenter presents, you would like to raise your hand and have a question in that moment. That can be done as well. So whichever way you prefer, but do not leave with your questions unanswered. Do not be afraid to state your questions. You are in a protected space. And after that, when the presentation is done, and you like to have representation from attorneys, you can have that as well. So be guided accordingly. And as I said before, if you know anyone who would benefit from this information, or you know someone who knows someone, please have them come over to this place. And if you're watching online, it's always better in person than online. So you can come on down to 343 11th Avenue. Did I get it right? Perfect. I've been practicing this thing. So thank you so much for being here. Let's pray together as we begin. Father, what a joy it is to have you as King, as Lord, and you, Father, as the King of the universe, was faced with immigration issues. You are the God of both undocumented and documented. And so we pray that you will intervene because you faced that situation. And so we pray that as you navigated that while you were on earth, that you will now navigate this for your children. Bless us now, we ask, and bless our presenters in Jesus' name. Amen. Attorney Al Waters, the female one.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you all of you for joining us this afternoon. My husband will read Carolina's bio, but I just wanted to say she's a really good friend. We both went to law school with her. She was on fire. We met her in one of our classes, and she was on fire with the professor, going back and forth. She's a great friend, and I know she cares deeply about those types of issues. When you listen to her bio, she's a child of refugees. Her parents or grandparents are refugees from Cuba. So she's not only passionate about it, but she has family who's experienced what it's like to be an immigrant and to have to leave their countries to be here. So I'm so glad she's here with us this afternoon. Adler will read her bio.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. Attorney Carolina Corbello of the Corbello Law Firm, which is based in Ridgewood. I'll just tell you a little bit about her. And by the way, Carolina is the reason why we ended up in New Jersey, just so you know. So thank her for us being here in New Jersey. Carolina's law practice primarily focuses on immigration and real estate matters. She's the daughter of refugees, as my wife just mentioned, who fled communist Cuba when Fidel Castro came to power. As immigrants who had to rebuild a life in the United States, Carolina's parents and grandparents instilled in her the importance of education as a true passport to freedom, and taught her the value of hard work and independent thinking. Not only did Carolina grow up fully bilingual in Spanish and English, but she developed a strong cultural awareness and knowledge of geopolitics thanks to nightly family dinners that they discussed as U.S.-Cuban relations and other world affairs. While in college, Carolina worked with her aunt, a real estate broker, with an office in Elizabeth, Newark, in the Elizabeth, Newark area, and witnessed firsthand the harsh disparities facing homebuyers of color in the 1990s. Aside from overt discrimination, many of the clients in the community, in her community, where her aunt worked, faced inequities such as predatory and unfair lending practices, language barriers, and the absence of competent attorneys to advocate on their behalf. Now, in her own law practice, Carolina is uniquely positioned to help clients, whether families, individuals, businesses, business investors, achieve both the pillars of the American dream, which is to obtain lawful status in the United States and becoming property owners. In her immigration work, Carolina represents individuals in proceedings before the United States Immigration Courts, as well as U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, that's USCIS, for family-based applications, naturalization, and humanitarian visas, such as special immigrant juvenile status, that's U visas, Violence Against Women Act, and the T visas of human trafficking. Carolina is highly experienced in removal, defense, and deportation, especially representing clients in matters of asylum, withholding of removal, relief under the Convention Against Torture, and cancellation of removal. Additionally, she advises small business owners and entrepreneurs on business immigration matters. In real estate, Carolina is skilled in handling all types of matters and has represented both buyers and sellers in the residential, commercial, or condominium space, as well as distressed homeowners facing foreclosure. Carolina received her Juris Doctor from Vermont Law School and interned for the Honorable Judge Jose Linares of the U.S. District Court for the District of New Jersey. After law school, Carolina clerked for the Honorable Joseph Conte of Bergen County Vicinage, the Civil Division. She is active in numerous community and legal organizations such as Kids in Need of Defense, Latin American Legal and Education Fund, Northeast Legal Services of New Jersey, and serves as treasurer of our local New Jersey chapter of the American Immigration Lawyer Association for the term 2023 to 2024. Carolina is admitted to New Jersey, the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey, the Circuit Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, and the United States Supreme Court. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Attorney Carolina Corbello to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. As you can tell, immigration is a passion of mine. I not only live it every day, but I love what I actually do. And if everybody wants to come together, if you a little closer, I think it would be great just to have this talk, because I want it to be very intimate, and I want you, as the pastor said, this is a safe space. This is your sanctuary where you can ask me questions later on after the presentation that you really want an attorney to. You can come up, slide all over. It's okay. Yes, it's fine.
This is the most obedient church in any way.
So just to give you a little bit of way of a little disclaimer, as most lawyers do, everything I will be discussing today will be general information about immigration. I cannot provide legal advice because each and every one of you who may have a legal matter, I cannot at this moment provide that kind of advice without seeing all the documentation, right? So a lot of the questions that you'll be asking me later, please have it, in a general format. Or if you don't know how to, express yourself, just feel free to jot some notes down, and Attorney Allwaters can. Sure, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I forgot to make that announcement. We're going to be passing out pieces of paper so you can write out your questions, and I'll just screen them, simply because this is being streamed, right?
Correct.
And we don't want any specific information online on the web. So I'll go through the questions and I'll ask the attorney for you, but we'll pass out papers so that we can keep it. Although this is a safe space, but once you get on the web, it becomes open to everyone, right?
And we want to keep your matters confidential, so generalized questions. So you could say, I have a friend that, okay, if you like. So I'm going to start off with explaining in general the types of, categories, let's say, of immigrants, what's the availabilities of relief, and then depending on your questions, you feel free to raise your hand and ask a question, and based on your, the questions you're asking, I will, tailor the conversation, okay? So of course, if you're a U.S. citizen, congratulations. You probably don't need to be here, except for the only thing I would advise you is that there's an election coming up next year. It's important that you vote. I'm not telling you who to vote for, but if you have an immigrant relative, after this conversation that we have today, you might want to reconsider who you may be voting for or have some other thoughts in your mind, okay? For those of you who find yourself with a green card, okay, or who are called legal permanent residents, my paralegal, Mary Torres, who's here, has documentation to hand out for those of you who, and we also have business cards, but flyers from the American Immigration Lawyers about becoming a U.S. citizen. So if you are a green card holder, you might be eligible, and I say might because there are factors, and I'm going to go into this and answer and dispel some of the myths of why you should become a U.S. citizen now. There is an upcoming election. Immigration is a very politicized topic now, as you can imagine, watching the news. We're seeing the news at the southwest border. A lot of migrants are coming. People are being denied their visas at the embassy, and people are also being turned away at the airports, at ports of entry. And so I'm going to get into a little bit of all of this and what's happening. But let's talk about what does it take to become a United States citizen if you're not born here, okay? First, you have to be at least 18 years old. You have to have a lawful permanent residence card. That's the green card. It used to be green. That's why they call it the green card. Now it's a couple of little other colors, okay? And you've had to be at least a legal permanent resident for at least 5 years, unless you've been married to, you got your green card on the basis of marriage, okay? You have to demonstrate that you have been physically present in the United States, okay, for at least 30 months out of the last 5 years prior to filing for your naturalization application, okay? You gotta be able to demonstrate that you've been continuously residing in the United States, that you haven't been just going back and forth between your original home country. You wanna be continuous, okay? And you have resided in the state in which you're applying for citizenship for at least 3 months, okay? You gotta be able to read, write, and speak English, and I'll talk about that, because I know that's the biggest fear for some folks that speak other languages. Right? And you need to understand the fundamentals of U.S. history and government. Okay? It's not that difficult, I'm telling you. If my mother-in-law can pass the U.S. citizenship test, all of you can, okay? And be willing to take the oath of allegiance, okay? And finally, meet the good moral character requirements. So let me speak about a couple of things about citizenship. If you're a man and you were here in the United States between the ages of 18 to 26, okay, and you came here lawfully, okay, or you did not come here lawfully and you adjusted your status and you were between those ages of 18 to 26, you were supposed to, or are supposed to, if you're in that age range, right, to have registered for the U.S. Selective Service System. What is that? The military. That's, you know, in case of a draft, as a man between the age of 18 and 26, you've had to have registered, okay? If you didn't fulfill that requirement, that doesn't mean that you're going to be denied U.S. citizenship. You're going to have to consult an attorney, okay, to help you get a document from the U.S. Selective Service, okay? And there has to be reasons, good cause, for why you did not register. And it could be a multitude of reasons. It could be health reasons. It could have been at the time you adjusted your status, you already aged out. But I wanted to highlight that for the men in the room, okay? The other concern is the ability to speak, read, and write in English. For those of us that come from English-speaking countries, this is not a problem. But you may have friends and family members that speak another language. I want you to understand that there are ways that, you know, if you're unable, that you're able to, there's an exception. And the exception could be based upon the amount of time you've been a green card holder, okay, and based on your age, okay, or if there is what is called a medical reason, okay? And a lot of folks that don't become or want to become U.S. citizens fear becoming U.S. citizens because of this whole language requirement. And they say, well, I'm never going to learn English. It's just so hard. I'm just X age, and I'm never going to acquire English. Understand, there might be reasons why you're having difficulties, or you know if a loved one is having difficulties in learning the language. So just don't say, well, you know, call defeat and say, I'm not going to do this. You got to talk to an immigration lawyer. Why? Because I had situations where individuals had problems trying to acquire the English language, and all we needed to do was go to a psychologist and find out why. Why? Because maybe there's a mental health reason. Maybe You have a literacy problem. Maybe you have, some sort of disability. Do not discount medical or psychological reasons, okay? Because that could be a reason that can get you to apply for citizenship. One of the other areas in becoming a citizen is this fear of answering questions, okay, about US history and the fundamentals of US government, okay? They ask you 10 questions at the interview. USCIS, US Citizenship and Immigration Services, provides all the resources for the exam online. Do not pay anybody for materials. It is all online in a multitude of languages. They even have flashcards. You just go to uscis.gov, go to the search bar, put in naturalization test, and you can download everything from a PDF, okay? They ask you 10 questions. How many of those 10 questions do you have to get right? 6 out of 10. And if you're on a good roll that day, and you stumble on 1 or 2, and you're like, oh no, I've messed up, I didn't get all my 6, most of the times the USCIS officer will ask you another two or 3 questions, okay? Especially if you can demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. I mean, this is not difficult stuff. It's, name me 3 states. What's the largest river in the United States? Okay, name me 1 Native American tribe, okay? Who was president during World War II? They give you the information. The test is that easy. It's just a matter of studying. And if you cannot study for some reason, you can't retain that information, like I said, there is what is called the N648, which is a medical waiver. And this goes back to the language issue. If you have somebody that has a language issue, you can get a waiver. But you need to consult an immigration attorney and a psychologist, or maybe your medical health professional, to explain why you're having difficulties. And if so, that's the document that you would need to fill out. Don't worry about the form number. I can give you that later. But I don't want folks out there who think that they're eligible for citizenship to be fearful because I have a disability, because I never had the ability to learn the language, that you just can't do it. There is a way, okay? Now, good moral character. Besides the obvious, which is you can't commit a crime involving moral turpitude. And I'm not going to get into the legalese of that definition. If you have committed not so serious crimes, or even a serious crime, you need to consult an attorney, okay, before applying for citizenship, because there may be consequences, okay? And it's important to not hide from what happened in the past. We all make mistakes, okay? And it's better to confront the mistake and speak to an attorney and say, am I eligible? Let's be honest. Can I become a citizen? Or what if I try to renew my green card? Will this be a problem for me? You want to tell an immigration attorney about this. And one of the other things is, if you're an immigrant, and the mistake that most immigrants do is that if they do commit a crime, they immediately go and expunge their record. And then I myself, I'm going crazy, because I'm like, how am I going to prove to immigration that this was resolved, or this was exactly what happened? Because they're going to want to see the entire file when they do their FBI background check, okay? So don't expunge your records, okay? Tell your immigrant friends, do not expunge your records, okay? And I know we do that for job opportunities, but for the purposes of immigration, that is a bad advice. Good moral character. Let me go. Besides committing crimes, paying your taxes. I know. I don't like to pay Uncle Sam $1 more than I need to, but it is what it is. If I earn income here in the United States or anywhere else worldwide, I have to report it. And it's important, and that's part of why USCIS reviews, and even the court looks at your tax returns. It's not only to show your presence here in the United States, how long you've been here, how long have you been paying taxes, but are you accurately paying taxes? I had a situation, I'm going to give you an example, of an individual I was representing in a deportation hearing who reported only $6,000 a year that he was earning income. But he was paying child support. He also was paying for rent. He had a car. He had to go to work. And he had expenses. When the judge reviewed everything and said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. How could you just be earning $6,000? I know you do X, and your expenses exceed what you're reporting. Doesn't make sense. That's how detailed the judges go through your applications. That's how much the USCIS officials go through your applications. They look at your tax returns, okay? They are calculating those numbers, okay? So you have to be honest, because it can come back to bite you, as they say. They are looking at all sources of income. Same thing as public benefits. You have to be honest with the attorney you're working with of any kind of public benefits that you are receiving, whether it's here in the state of New Jersey or any other state, because this can affect your ability to become a U.S. citizen, or it could even jeopardize your current green card status, okay? And that's something called fraud. So you have to be very cognizant of that. Now, there's no income requirement to become a citizen. The only thing that if you are income limited for the filing fee, which is right now it's $725, there is a waiver, a fee waiver, so that you could become a citizen. So you could just demonstrate, what your income is based on your tax returns, and if you don't file a tax return because your income, you don't have as much income, you can provide any kind of public benefits statement that you're receiving right now, and then you could apply for citizenship, okay? So let me touch on a little bit more for those who are green card holders. You want to be cognizant of any kind of arrests, convictions that can affect your ability to renew your green card. For those of you who have married a U.S. citizen, first, if your marriage has been less than 2 years old, you have to remove the conditions of your temporary residency for you to get permanent residency, so you have to do that, because there's a conditional residence and then there's permanent residence. So those are for those who marry a U.S. citizen. If you're married for less than 2 years, what they give you is a conditional residence. Then you got to apply again to USCIS for that permanent 10-year green card, okay? And the other thing that may affect your permanent residency is if you claim to be a U.S. citizen. I've had situations where a client who's a green card holder voted in an election, a federal election. It happens. It happens. So these are things that would disqualify you from your, not only becoming a U.S. citizen, but also potentially putting your green card at stake. In the prior administration, we experienced, as you remember, during the travel ban, and there were a lot of green card holders that were being screened at the airport and were being told by immigration officials, if you want to come in, you got to sign this document. And most people were like, okay, I just want to get in. And they signed these documents, and they didn't read what those documents said. Well, guess what those documents were? The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol were handing people abandonment of your green card documents, okay? And they would just slip it right to you, and they were like, well, if you want to get in, you got to sign this. And most people just out of hurry just signed it. So you have to be cognizant of that. I'm not saying that it's happening now, but it may happen in the future, okay? And so you need to read everything. And if you can't understand what you're reading, you got to ask somebody. Just don't sign. Just don't sign. I'd rather that you stay in secondary inspection, call a family member, call a lawyer, and have that lawyer explain to you what that document is, because most likely it's an abandonment of your green card, okay? Or I'd rather that you get placed in detention than to sign away your green card status and dispute that issue before an immigration judge. Okay. So outside of US citizen green card status, there are other categories. And the other categories are usually you're a visa holder. And there's employment-based visas, there's family-based visas, and there's what I call humanitarian visas, okay? So I'm not gonna get into the employment-based visas or the family-based visas, which are usually generally you're petitioning a family member, your mother, your father, your child, the immediate relatives, your spouse. I'm gonna focus on the other categories because you may know somebody who is undocumented. And let me explain what undocumented means, right? Because this is a very, it includes a lot of people. So those are the folks that may have crossed the border, have not been admitted or inspected, okay? They snuck in or they got caught, arrested by Customs and Border Patrol, and now they've been placed in immigration proceedings. These are folks, also folks that may have entered legally on a tourist visa, on a student visa, on any other kind of visa, but has overstayed their visa, right? And now you find yourself undocumented, okay? And there's folks too that don't renew their green cards for whatever reasons, because they may have committed a crime, there might be another issue, people forget, that happens a lot. People cross the border or come in through parole and forget to do their adjustments or to hire an attorney or to follow up. Believe you me, I've seen everything. I've even seen somebody who came in lawfully on parole in 1980 as a child who could have gotten a green card basically immediately and has not done so until now. And she showed up at my office and I was like flabbergasted because I'm like, really? You could have been a citizen by now and it's like 30 some years now. Okay, or more. So it's important not to have fear. You need to address your situation. And the worst thing that you can do, if you're on a current visa status, let's say tourist visa, student visa, and your status has not expired, I recommend to all of you who your visa has not expired to think about or to talk to an attorney about what you should do next. Because there's ways to extend your status, okay? Lawfully, okay? It's not about me telling you to go marry somebody. I'm not here to tell you to do that because that's committing marriage fraud. But there may be legitimate ways that we can extend your status, do a change of status. Maybe you came on a tourist visa and now you decided, you know what? I want to improve my English or I want to study and go become a nurse. There might be the possibility of a student visa, okay? There might be the possibility that we can get you on something else. But doing nothing is worse than doing something. I'd rather you do something. Now, for those of you who are out of status or who have crossed the border, it is what it is. And now we got to talk about what are the options we have, okay? There's no line. Okay, there is no line. I know there's a lot of rhetoric out there. Get in line, but there is no line because the line that there is at the embassies, the US embassies, and I can tell you that line is growing and growing and growing. And I know some of you here are petitioning loved ones, okay? You're following the process, you're doing it legally, and guess what? Your petition's still running for 3, 5, 10, 12, 13 years. Because of the pandemic, there's been delays. Because of processing delays at USCIS because they're short on staff. Because of conflicts around the world, now things are being shifted, right? So they're doing it lawfully, right? But it is what it is, right? For those of you who came across the border or overstayed your visas, there is no line. I know that. You know that. But the rest of the American public, the voting public, doesn't realize that. Okay, because they don't choose to care, and maybe we need to teach them about this. So what options do you have? Okay, so let me start first with the easy option, and this is more for children, okay? If a child came to the United States, regardless of how the child came, okay? And the child was abandoned or neglected or abused by either biological parent, okay, or legal parent, let's say your adoptive parent, okay? And the child is here in the United States, and there's the other parent here, or maybe a caretaker, and the child's enrolled in school, and the child is under 21 in the state of New Jersey, okay? And whoever that caretaker is willing to seek custody of that child here in the United States, right? I'm just going to limit it to New Jersey right now. Okay, go to court, go to family court, get custody of that child. That child may have a path to what is called a special immigrant juvenile visa, okay? Abuse, abandonment, and neglect. You don't have to prove two parents. You got to prove that one parent did it. So there's one bad parent and there's one good parent, right, in this scenario. There could be two bad parents, okay? I've seen that too. But the point being, under New Jersey law, you can get custody of that child. That child later, once that order is given by a family court judge, you can later file what is called an I-360 petition before USCIS, and that child is on his or her path, not only to a work authorization immediately and a social security number, but then to a permanent residency card. Now, the only downside of this is that this avenue benefits only the child. It does not benefit the bad parent or the good parent. Because I know the next question you're going to ask me, well, can't the child, when they're adult, petition either one of their parents? No. Regardless of how much you love your mother and father as a child, and let's say it's your mom that's the good parent, dad's the bad parent, okay, in this scenario. You can never help mom. You can never petition mom. The law was drafted by Congress to only benefit the child. So there right now are children in this country that are on their way to a green card. There is a generation of children who have obtained this form of relief, okay? And you may think to me, well, I don't know any of these kids. You know, I've never seen them. You're not going to know who they are. But these are usually the kids that may come across the border, may come, you know, with a loved one from their home country, and you later find out that that parent or that caretaker is abusing the child, or that child's been neglected, and you're like, what am I going to do for this child? This possibly could be a form of relief, okay? And the caretaker doesn't need to be blood relation. The caretaker could be a church member, okay? Until that child turns 21, okay? So then what other forms of relief are there? If you've been a victim of a crime, okay, and let's say the crime happened, because this is usually what happens. You're a victim of a crime, and I'll give you a scenario. You're walking down the streets, you're coming back from work, and somebody assaults you, beats you over the head, bleeding, everything, and the cops come, you're taken to the hospital, they mend you, the assailant gets thrown into jail. You never help out except for giving a statement to the police, okay? But you do cooperate, okay? You help, the police in as far as giving a statement. And let's say that you're so fearful because you're an immigrant, because you're undocumented, that you don't do anything about this. And then 10 years down the road, you stumble into my office and you say, well, what can I do? I was a victim of a crime. And there's a list of crimes on the USCIS website they're called qualifying crimes. So if you're a victim of any of these qualifying crimes, you got to get a certification from either the prosecutor's office or the police department or the judge, depending on the state that you're in. And if you get that, what is it called, that certification signed, and then you come to me and you say, Carolina, can I still get this U visa thing I've heard about? Because this happened 10 years ago. Yes, you can. There's no statute of limitations on you being the victim of a crime, a qualifying. The downside to this kind of relief is that visa takes a long time to process, okay? Right now it's taking 7 years for that visa to process. And the reason being is that Congress has only allotted 10,000 visas a year for the U visa category, okay? So it's backlogged. There's so many people who have been victims of crimes that qualify for this relief, that they're backlogged by 7 years. So the current administration, what they did is realizing that there's a backlog. If you submit what is called an I-918 U visa application, and they deem you prima facie, after reviewing everything, that it seems that, yeah, you were a victim of a crime and you helped the police and you helped, law enforcement get the defendant, then they will issue you what is called a work permit, okay? In the meantime, while you're waiting for your U visa status, okay? And just because you were the victim of the crime, that doesn't mean that it just only benefits you. If you have, at the time you're married and you have kids who are undocumented, they get to benefit and ride off of that. So that's really important. Now, please do not take this information and say, well, you know what, I'm gonna go walk out right now and let somebody beat me up, okay? Because I've had clients tell me that. They go, you know what, I'll let somebody hit me. I'm like, no. This has to, I'm not asking you to look to become a victim, okay? Please don't do that, okay. Then there's another law. It's called the Violence Against Women Act. It's not just about women. I know it says women in the act, but if you're married to a US citizen or a green card holder citizen, or you have a US citizen child, right, that abuses you, okay, you may be eligible for this relief called VAWA, Violence Against Women Act. I've represented women and I've represented men, okay? This is for individuals who have been abused by their spouse, in most cases their spouse, okay? They've been financially abused, sexually abused, mentally abused, physically abused. And it's not just one type of abuse. I have a wheel that I use in my office that I show clients about the types of abuse. And a lot of clients that come in and I screen them for this kind of relief, they scratch their head, and when I tell them, look, you qualify for a U visa, maybe a U visa or VAWA, and I tell them about VAWA, and they go, I don't know about that. And I keep asking them questions, and I go, you know what, you qualify for VAWA. And they're like, really? Was I abused? And then I tell them how they were abused. Because sometimes people don't realize that they were abused. The fact that they were married to a US citizen, and the US citizen would say, you know what, give me your money every time you come home. Give it to me right now. I'm gonna hold on to it. They won't give them the keys. They won't give them access to their let's say their work authorization or whatever it may be, their documents, okay? The individual is controlling you, manipulating you, playing mind games, things that sometimes when you're the victim, you don't see it, and you're experiencing a lot of trauma. I see it a lot in the cases of men, because I know in our society, men want to be men, right? And they don't want to admit when they've been harmed. And it's the same thing goes too with women. We have a tough time explaining or admitting to, I was hurt, okay? I want you to know that when you come to an immigration attorney's office, we're here to help you, okay? And the last thing I want to do is to re-traumatize you, okay? I'm here to help you. So if you can't be candid with me about your situation, then I can't help you. And sometimes there are some difficult situations that folks can't talk about. And it's okay, because you say, you know what, she's a lawyer, she's not gonna understand, but I could see it in your eyes. And my paralegal knows very well that I can tell when someone's hurting. I see it in your eyes. And it's okay, you can just stare somewhere else, but I'm gonna send you to a psychologist. And then 9 out of 10 times I know that you've been abused, okay? Trust the immigration professionals, especially lawyers and psychologists, because we're here to help you, okay? What other forms of relief? So besides those two, U visa, VAWA, there's also a T visa. A T visa is, you may have heard, it's like a human trafficking visa, okay? In a classic sense, you've probably heard of like the sex worker. Usually those are the scenarios for human trafficking, right? but it doesn't have to be. You might be a T visa, applicant because you experience unfair labor practices at your job, okay? But it's very specific. There's a heightened standard, okay? So if you experience involuntary servitude or you're being mistreated at the job, you're being controlled, you're not allowed to leave the premises, okay? I'm just giving you some examples. You want to think about that, because I am representing clients right now who are eligible for T visa status based on unfair labor practices, okay? But I'm also representing individuals who've been trafficked by the border by loved ones, a family friend, and being held hostage in somebody's house, okay? So that's another option. Let's talk about the most popular option right now on the street, let's say, okay, that we hear. Asylum. What is this? Asylum. I hear it all the time in the news, right? We've probably all heard of it. Asylum. Okay. So if you're outside of the country and you're seeking refuge, right, and the U.S. government determines that you should come into the United States, you're considered a refugee, okay? It's the same law. The asylum law applies to refugees and to asylum seekers. Once you're within the United States and you file an application called the I-589, the asylum application, whether you find yourself in immigration removal proceedings or let's say they didn't catch you, you just came through the airport, you legally entered, you overstayed, and the reason you came was because you were fleeing persecution from your home country, okay? From Sierra Leone, or whatever country you want to pick in the world. The point being, asylum has become, and you hear it now in the news as this topic, because we're seeing a lot of people crossing the border, right? Asylum has to be based on one of 5 things. You're being persecuted, you have a well-founded fear, or you've been in the past persecuted based on race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or your political opinion. Now you can have all 5, 4 of the 5, 3 of the 5, 2 of the 5, or 1 of the 5, okay? Carolina, how do I show that? Because, and this is what happens, most of my clients that come in, they go, the reason I came to the United States is because I was extorted, and I feel unsafe in my country. And I turn around and I'm very honest with my clients. I go, I'm sorry, it happens everywhere in the world, right? I can walk down the streets anywhere. New York City, I can get beaten up, I can get extorted, I can get robbed, right? That is not asylum. It happens. Or if you say to me, well, Carolina, I came here because I can't feed my family. I get that. I understand that. I sympathize with you. I empathize. But it's not a reason to leave get up and leave your country and come to the United States and expect us, here I say us, the United States government, to give you work authorization or to open the door, okay? Over the years, recently, asylum has become this thing that you hear immigration advocates say, well, we got to protect immigrants' rights, and there's a lot of asylum seekers. As we hear the rhetoric about closing the border, building the wall, whatever it may be, okay? The thing is, asylum was designed after World War II, after the atrocities that were seen. Because why? Because somebody's nationality, somebody's religion, somebody's political opinion, they were persecuted because of that, or their membership in a particular social group. It's not to be used lightly. This is a discretionary option, okay? So when people tell you, well, just apply for asylum, you'll get a work permit, and it doesn't matter. I just don't want you to think that, buy into this pipe dream that you're going to get, this dream that you're going to be granted asylum when in reality you don't have the evidence. You don't have the documentation to prove it, okay? Because you have to show that it was your government or a third party that was committing the persecution, and then in the future, you will be persecuted, and that you couldn't have internally relocated within your country, okay? If you want to read up on asylum, it's on the uscis.gov page. There's, it explains everything, and a lot of clients hire lawyers. Why? Because it's complicated. There's things called, there are, let's say, specialists in this field in immigration. I'm specialized in more the asylum space, the deportation space. I'm not a specialist in business immigration, because why? Immigration is so large, so vast, and very complex, okay? And I tend to deal with individuals, families, folks that are coming to the United States. So you say to me, Carolina, well, if I don't qualify for asylum, what do I have, right? Well, maybe you come from a particular country. You come from Haiti, right? You might qualify for temporary protected status. Every administration designates certain countries based on war, whatever is going on. It could be an economic situation, or let's say a hurricane, a horrible natural disaster. They will categorize a group of individuals based on a certain time period as being eligible for temporary protected status. And the most, I would say, the grandfathers of temporary protected status is Salvadorians, okay? You probably have heard of it. So there's a long list of countries that have this eligibility. And you might say to me, Carolina, but I see the word temporary. Is it truly temporary? Yes, for now, it is temporary because you just don't know who might come in the next election, right? But it is at the discretion of the Department of Homeland Security based upon what they see, okay? And what's going on in that particular home country, okay? So when I have clients that have temporary protected status, they're always asking me, how do I adjust my status? How do I do this? There are ways. But the thing what I want folks to know is that to be cognizant of their case and their situation if you are on TPS, because it's not a status like being a green card holder. It's not like being on a U visa. It is not a pathway to a green card. It may be, if you're not married, you might, let's say you fall in love with a U.S. citizen right here in New Jersey, and you have TPS. Yes, you can adjust your status, but how did you enter the United States? Did you enter unlawfully, or did you enter, crossing the border, right? Did you take advanced parole, which is a permission from DHS to go travel back to your home country for an urgent humanitarian need? Did you come back and then marry your U.S. citizen spouse? These are all questions that a lawyer will ask you. Then you might be able to adjust your status, okay? Other options. There are situations that are not in the textbooks, let's say, or on the USCIS website. There are situations where I've run into where I've had unfair labor practices, working with other attorneys, where the U.S. Department of Labor will ask a certain group of, let's say, workers, will ask DHS to get protection, deferred action, okay? That's some sort of temporary protection like TPS. That's something that another U.S. government agency basically requests from DHS, and that's an option for some people. You're not going to stumble on it like, it has to be something, it just happens. These are one of these case-by-case scenarios. There's situations, medical reasons, right? We can ask for a humanitarian deferred action for you to stay remain in the United States because of maybe you have a U.S. citizen child that's ill, or you yourself came on a tourist visa and all of a sudden fell ill and you had to get emergency surgery, and now you find yourself out of status and in recovery, okay? There's so many scenarios. I'm trying to see here, DACA. Let me talk about DACA, because that's always something that's, people ask me, do I qualify for DACA? Right now, there's no new initial DACA applicants. They're not accepting initial applicants anymore. And that DACA is the dreamers, okay, the children that have been here. And that was a program that was done by President Obama. Right now, that program is being challenged in federal court. There's a lot of pushback on that because I would say the Republican-led states want to see that program dissolve for reasons that we can discuss in a different environment, right? So the state of affairs of immigration, where are we? And then what else do we have out there? We have these humanitarian parole programs that you probably have heard about. The alphabet soup, as I call them. The Cuban, Nicaraguan, Haitian, Venezuelan parole program. The U for You, the United for Ukraine. You know, this is something that the current administration has done to basically help folks that are abroad, not folks that are already in here, okay? And the reason I mention this is because you may have loved ones or you may know of somebody that might be eligible to be petitioned on this program, okay? I petitioned somebody on this program from Venezuela. He right now is working with my office, a young man who's a lawyer in Venezuela. And you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to do this petition, let's say. You could be a green card holder, you could be a TPS holder, as long as you have work authorization, or you could be a church, a religious house of worship. It could be 5 of us getting together and saying, you know what, we're going to petition this person from Haiti. This is a great opportunity for folks in those home countries to bring those people here to the United States. Why? Because they get parolee status. They come into the United States. They get 2 years to work in the United States. Now, we can talk about, well, why the 2 years? Can they renew the 2 years? Well, we don't know yet, okay? Because right now this is what the current administration has rolled out. But we know that with the Ukraine program, which the Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan program has been modeled after, they're renewing the United for Ukraine, okay? And the same thing goes for the Afghan parolees that came during the evacuation. So what else is there, Carolina? Well, it depends, right? Because everybody's circumstances is different. Some of you may have removal orders or deportation orders. And you might say, well, what can I do? Well, I would need to have a conversation, okay, with you about your removal order, because there might be an opportunity to discuss reopening your case, and there's a valid basis. But like I said before, doing nothing is not good, right? Because where are we headed, right? Let's talk about that, okay? We're coming to an election next year, okay? I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, okay? I'm going to tell you to vote what you believe in and what, your pocket, I guess, right? But the thing is, the state of affairs of immigration is dire. People are coming across the border. I'm not denying that. Our immigration system is broken. We have over 3 million cases right before all of the entire U.S. immigration court system that is backlogged. Cases are taking a long time. I have asylum cases that have been pending for close to 4 to 5 years before the immigration court, some even longer. Processing times in USCIS are longer than a year and a half. And if you're petitioning your loved one or petitioning a fiancé, expect to see at least 2 years, that person or more. So, and then if you have a loved one, let's say you're petitioning your sibling, you're talking about over 10 years, okay? Especially if they're over the age of 21, and if they're married, OMG. That's going to take a long time, okay? The system is broken. And why is it broken? Because those folks in D.C. don't want to do anything about it. And that's why how I end my presentation today is to my U.S. citizens here and to my green card holders. If you're a U.S. citizen, please vote. It's important that you vote, okay? Don't give up your right to vote. People fought long and hard to get you that vote. Vote. Because you may have an immigrant spouse, you might have an immigrant parent, child, loved one, or somebody you just care about, okay? That this is a big issue. If you're a green card holder and you're eligible for citizenship, we need you. We need you to come and become citizens and vote, okay? I'm not saying, I can't predict the outcome in the future, but I could tell you right now, when I go to Newark and I see the lines of people becoming U.S. citizens or sitting in that room, I'm inspired, okay? I'm inspired of people are motivated. And you know who are most of the folks that are becoming U.S. citizens? People of color, okay? We need to help each other, okay? And the right to vote is not something to just discard, okay? When you become a U.S. citizen, you have the right to travel, okay? You have the right to get certain jobs because you're a U.S. citizen, okay? And benefits. And if you choose not to vote, that's fine too. You have that right, right? But so many people are impacted. We all know somebody who's an immigrant. We all know somebody, whether it's somebody cooking our food when we go pick up at the local pizza shop or Chinese restaurant, or it may be somebody you interact with at school, or somebody who is working with the doctor that you see, or the person that is cleaning your house, okay, or the person that you say hello to, or it's your neighbor. We have to be kinder as a nation, because as you can all tell, the world is becoming an uglier place out there. We have a lot of conflict, a lot of war, a lot of children dying, a lot of people dying. And we have to love thy neighbor, right? We know that everybody has different reasons why they came to the United States, and you and I can disagree about whether we should build a wall, whether we should relax our immigration laws or toughen up our immigration laws, but something needs to be done. And that's why it's important that those of you who have that right to vote or the ability to become citizens, do it, because you can help somebody. Now, for those of you who can't vote, right, or can't feel that you can't do anything, I ask you, if you speak another language, help that fellow immigrant with their paperwork, or help them translate a document, or guide them through the U.S. court system or immigration court system. Take them to that hearing, drive them. Because the problem with immigration is that most immigrants have fear, and they don't do anything because of fear. And like that client I told you about, that's taken her like over 30 years to show up at my office with her U.S. citizen husband, and she's got 6 American kids. Why it took her that long was what? That 4-letter word, fear. Okay? So, and I'm going to be honest, there are times where a lawyer will tell you there's no option for you right now. There is no line for you. There is nothing. And if they're telling you that, believe them, okay? Because the worst thing is for you not to hear, okay? I always tell clients, I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. There are those lawyers out there, okay? I'm not one of those lawyers. I'm going to tell you what it is. If you did something wrong in the past, I'm going to say to you, that's what happened. Okay, well, this is affecting your petition. You're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. Okay? You should do Y and Z if to improve your case, or this is whatever it is. But the point being is that you need to be honest with an immigration lawyer. Now, just a reference, if you're seeking an immigration lawyer, I recommend that you guys go to the American Immigration Lawyers Association webpage. Immigration's complex. So you don't go to you don't go to a regular doctor, right, to deal with your foot. Maybe just for a preliminary referral, right? But you want to go to somebody that does this, okay? So you want to ask, and I tell immigrant populations this because it's important. You're not going to go to a personal injury attorney and ask them to represent you in an immigration case, okay? Even though they represented you, let's say, in your personal injury matter really well, okay? You want somebody that does this regularly, okay? You don't want to go to a notario or an immigration consultant down the street here in Paterson because you know what? It's just cheaper. They're just charging me $200, okay? This is your life. If you spend less money, and I'm not advocating to go spend a lot, find the most expensive lawyer, no. but be judicious. The reason why immigration is complex is because you need to be in it, you need to do it a lot, okay? You need to know what to do, okay, as an immigration attorney. 4 years of college, 3 years of law school, and I have over 10 years of experience doing immigration law, okay? You don't want somebody that's new to this to impact your life, okay? So that's really important. Now, I am willing to take your questions. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So I do work with, before I take your questions, Sister Nadej told me to remind, I work with a nonprofit down in Trenton, okay, that was given a USCIS grant for citizenship. If you are interested, and we could talk separately after the lecture about pursuing citizenship through this grant, okay? I am the supervising attorney. This is what I do in my free time. I'm actually a supervising attorney for a nonprofit in downtown Trenton. We can help you process your naturalization application, okay? It's totally lo bono, okay, for those of you who are income limited, okay? But I'm here to answer your questions, your concerns, your general concerns about, questions about immigration, the system, and I have that young lady over there who has a question.
1 minute. Get your mic.
Oh, I didn't know if you need my mic.
No, not yours. No. Hold for the mic.
Oh, yes, no worries. Yeah, if anyone needs to write questions and you feel more comfortable writing your questions instead of asking it in public, please let Sister Nadej know. Okay?
You have addressed a lot of situations concerning like cross-border and stuff like that, and Spanish-speaking people and other people that speak different languages, but you have not addressed anything concerning the Caribbean people.
Okay, so, and let me address that, because there are some, I did address Haiti, and that's in the Caribbean, but I understand that. So, yes, I'll address that point on. There is nothing out there as far as like a TPS for those countries in the Caribbean, unfortunately. That depends on the political circumstances and any kind of, natural disaster. That's something that's determined by the Department of Homeland Security. A lot of this is it's politics driven based upon who's in the administration, right? If you enter for most Caribbean countries, because I do have clients from Caribbean countries, this is why I address the other options like the U visa, the VAWA, the special immigrant juvenile visas. If you come here and haven't overstayed your visa, there may be options for you like a student visa or extending your B1, B2 tourist visa. That's why I brought in the discussion about the T visa, the U visa, and the VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, because there's not many options. That's why I was saying in the beginning, there's no line. There's nothing. This is where we are at, unfortunately. Okay? It's unfortunate, but that's why we need people to vote. We need people to sort of force Congress to do their job. And when I say do their job, it's not just voting, it's also calling up your congressman or woman and saying, hey, I have a loved one. I'm a U.S. citizen, or whoever you may be. You don't have to be a U.S. citizen. You can call them and say, look, what are you doing for folks from Jamaica, right? You have to express that. Sitting around and doing nothing is not going to help us move forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, I have another one here. Let me know if you still that one. Okay. Okay. How could I have the benefits being, I'm not going to use the word illegal, okay, because we don't use that word. Immigration advocates, we use the word undocumented, okay? How can I have benefits? And I assume that it's what we're talking about is healthcare benefits. So if you're in New Jersey, the law is right now under the Affordable Care Act, which is the Obamacare, right? And New Jersey has its own version of Obamacare that we've elected. Thank you. If you're under the age of, I believe it's 19 in New Jersey, and you're a minor, you can get New Jersey family care, okay? If you're an adult, you can't unless you get a work authorization, right? So if you have a work authorization, you're able to get a work authorization, then you can get health insurance under New Jersey's a version of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, okay? However, if you live in New York, okay, and you're undocumented, the state of New York gives everybody who's undocumented health care. So that's the difference if you cross the river, okay? And I'll leave that up to you if you want to do that. But the point being is that every state of the 50 states, they're all different. Every state had either opted in to the Affordable Care Act, or they did their own version, or they expanded the Affordable Care Act within their state, okay? To cover certain categories of individuals. Okay. Okay. So this individual said, I'm in the country, undocumented, how do I become legal? What can I do to get a work permit? Well, that depends on your individual circumstance. So we need to talk, about what your particular circumstances are. Okay, so this one is somebody who wrote this in Spanish. Okay, so this is a question about showing up in court, okay? Okay, do not be scared to show up in immigration court. The worst thing that you could do is not show up to your ICE check-in, which is when you check in with ICE, or if you have a hearing before an immigration judge, you should show up. You are not going to get arrested that day, okay? If you prefer to go with a lawyer, hire an attorney, or come with a friend that's a U.S. citizen or has lawful documentation in the United States. The worst thing you could do is not show up to court, because then what happens? They'll issue you a removal order, and then guess what? They could pick you up, okay? So show up to court. That's important. Okay, we have a hand over there. Go ahead.
Okay, I need to understand the amnesty a little better, because what I understand with amnesty, if it lasts for 2 years, they have documents. The people that have come to me have documents of amnesty.
Okay, so can you clarify what amnesty do they have?
I really don't know, because we're not allowed to
Yeah.
make copies of those papers.
Okay.
Just that they have papers saying that they have a right to be in the United States.
So they may have parole. Is that what it is? Is that what you're saying? Like some sort-
Amnesty is from like another country, and they bring amnesty papers, and they can work, but they can only be here for 2 years.
Yeah, that's dependent on contingent on Department of Homeland Security. So they govern that. I mean, you and I can talk about that outside, just as far as what specifically. But usually those are programs, those are deferred action programs that the government designs for protection of certain groups of people.
And also in New Jersey, for undocumented, they can go to any hospital and apply for charity care.
That's true, but that's different from getting
Health
actual
insurance.
health care coverage.
Well, there's no health care coverage, but at least they can get health care at the hospital.
Correct. That's charity care. And that's one of the fears that people have, is that they don't want to go because of the prior administration. If they had gone to to get charity care, that would be used against them, and that was litigated. Yes. But I think most people ask me about benefits. That was that question. It was tailored to.
Again, the only thing that was held against people,
Yeah.
if they apply for cash benefits from welfare office, not food stamps.
Yeah, that's
But-
correct.
I've worked there for 30 years, but cash benefits. So other things other than that, I really don't know, because I do know that the law changes
Yeah.
and is much different now.
It was more restrictive during the Trump administration.
I'm talking about before Trump.
Yeah, I know, before. But last administration, that was a lot of the concerns. That's why I get a lot of people in fear now because of the prior administration.
Okay, I have a question. So we are here undocumented. I'm 21, 16, and 51. Those are the three ages,
I'm
right?
21.
The person's 21, one is 16, one is 51. So the question is, what are the different options that we can explore to try to be able to adjust our status apart from marriage?
Okay, so that goes back to why did you come? So every immigration attorney starts with, why did you come to the United States? What was your intent, right? Because if you came on a visa, you had a particular intent, right? If you got a tourist visa, you came here for tourism. But then if you chose to overstay, then that really wasn't the real reason why you came, right? You might have.
There's another question.
Okay,
to
go
that.
ahead.
They
Yeah.
came as a tourist. So the other question is, can I change my expired tourist visa to a student visa?
So you cannot change your status if your visa has expired. It has to be current. So you can always change your status, okay, your visa status, as long as it's still current. That's really important. And you have to apply to USCIS for that change of status.
Next question. If I am able to change my status to a student visa, what do I get? What do you get access to with the student visa?
You get a social security number, you get to study, right? But you basically are buying time so you can find that employer that will petition you on an employment-based visa. Or if you fall in love. I'm just leaving those those are your two options. There are a lot of individuals who come on on tourist visa, change to student visa, and they renew their student visa based upon whatever their financial circumstances are, to extend their status so that they can get that employment-based visa. There's a lot of folks that are doing that right now.
I have a question.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you saying, based on the question that was asked, that because the person overstayed, there is no pathway?
No, it depends on the particular circumstances of the individual. Because the problem is, I just can't say, you came on a tourist visa, and now what do I do? I need to know more about the person. Has the person been a victim of a crime? Has the person, are they in a abusive relationship with a U.S. citizen? I don't know those things. They don't have any of those guys. Yeah. So if they don't have those other options, then there's nothing right now for them.
Given the backlog you mentioned earlier, just a follow-up, how long is it taking now to transfer from a tourist visa to a student visa? Like, what is the time period for, if their tourist visa was not expired, how long do you think it would have taken them to switch over to a student visa?
So it could be relatively less than 6 months, because the thing what right now is key with getting a student visa is that you have to apply to a program, okay, at a university that will issue you an I-20, which is the document that you will need to get the student visa, okay? And so you need to be accepted into a program first, okay? And then have your application processed, but it's not taking that long. I've had people less than 6 months. Ma'am.
Question, can a undocumented person receive a TIN number?
Yes. So with the ITIN, what that is a tax identification number. So people confuse this with a social security number. But what it is that the IRS will issue somebody who's undocumented, any foreign national, okay, that is deriving U.S. sourced income, you need to report to the IRS and file taxes, okay? The way you get that tax ID number is that you have to mail in to the IRS your current passport. And right now it's taking about 6 months for that process to be done. So usually what ends up happening is most immigration advocates and lawyers and tax professionals will tell the immigrant who's undocumented, You know, when you got to file your tax returns, let's do it right then and there so we can just mail in your passport, get the tax ID number and all that stuff so we can file your taxes. Because that's what a lot of undocumented folks do, is they say, you know what, I'm going to demonstrate good moral character and I'm going to start paying taxes. And that's really great, because why? If you're paying the IRS or filing tax returns, you're showing, if later on, down the road, there is some sort of amnesty, like there was back in 1986. That's the last one. That was under Ronald Reagan. The way people are able to demonstrate that they've been physically present and continuously present in the United States is by tax returns. So that's why it's really important, and it shows your good moral character.
Next question. If you come to this country under someone else's name, will you be able to adjust your status?
It depends. I've represented individuals who have done this while potentially committing marriage fraud as well. So there are waivers. That's something that's done in immigration. Waivers are basically asking for a pardon. Okay. I think let me stress that the lady in the back, on the left side. Yes. Oh, okay.
All right. Just a quick question.
Sorry, go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. Just a quick question. Could I get some clarification on one's visa is expired, or the period of time that was allowed in the country? What is the difference based on what you were saying earlier on the issue of how you can get some benefits as an undocumented person? So I'm just asking the question, shed some clarity on a visa that is expired, meaning the time has passed when it was issued, or the period that the person was given to stay, which is normally 6 months. Is it the same that you're talking about, or it is separate and apart?
No. So there is the status you're given. Let's take the tourist visa, right? If you're given a certain period of time to remain in the it's not the expiration date on your visa. What we're talking about is the time that immigration, when they stamp you in, when you come into the country, and they say you have to leave before X date, okay? If you remain in the United States after that date that DHS has told you that you have to depart, then you have overstayed, okay? That from from their standpoint. And you start accruing what is called unlawful presence. Now, most people start accruing, you wouldn't like to depart immediately as possible, but some people end up overstaying. And as you start overstaying more than 180 days, this is where things get more, from the purposes of unlawful presence purposes, you're going to need waivers potentially in your particular situation, depending on how you can adjust, if you can adjust your status. But what they're looking at is that stamp in your passport. They're not looking at that you were given a visa for 10 years, okay? They've told you exactly how long you can stay in the United States and when you have to depart. And then I think there was something about a fraudulent visa, right? Did you say that, or passport?
No.
Okay.
No, the next question is, I've been in this country undocumented for over 20 years.
Oh, sorry, this woman has a question, sorry. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Now, you said when someone applies for the TIN, the tax identification number, they have to submit their passport. Does it have to be a valid passport or an expired passport? And do they get it back?
Yes, you will get it back. It should be a valid passport. I mean, there may be some exceptions because of some countries, like I deal with mostly all Latin America, Caribbean countries. And so what exactly is, like Venezuela is one of those countries where individuals are coming to the United States with expired passports, okay? But most of the time, it's usually 9 out of 10 times, most individuals go get a new passport with their consulate, and that's what they send into the IRS for identification purposes. Go ahead.
So I just want to clarify, because that's an interesting question. So even though that person is here illegally, let's use the word undocumented, yes, and you're saying that it is encouraged for them to get a tax identification number,
So I am not a tax lawyer, right? But I'm going to tell you right now, you have to abide by the law. So if you are deriving U.S. sourced income, you are working within the United States, you should report taxes, okay? And why? Because if you are picked up by immigration and you are married, let's say you're undocumented, but you're married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder spouse, and you have paid taxes, there is a defense called cancellation of removal, okay? That if you have been here for more than 10 years and you can demonstrate good moral character, and one of those elements is paying taxes, right? Then I can cancel your deportation based on your relation, your marriage to a U.S. citizen or green card holder, or if you have a U.S. citizen child or a green card holder, U.S. citizen spouse or child, or green card holder spouse or child, okay, or parent. So it's very helpful. And that's why a lot of folks, when it came to DACA, were able to show that they were here for certain periods of time because their parents were paying taxes. And that's how they were able to demonstrate that. And this, ma'am, you had a question?
So you keep saying if you're married, if you're undocumented and you're married, but what if you're not married and you pay your taxes, or you don't have the ITN but you use your Social Security and pay your taxes? What does that do for you?
So if you have a Social Security and you paying taxes but you're not married, right? And you don't have any kind of status because let's say that status elapsed, right, for whatever reason, right? You're just paying the IRS. That's it. You have a Social Security number, and at some point in the future, if something was to happen, you've been reporting. You've been doing what you're supposed to do from a tax standpoint and from a good moral character standpoint, okay? There's no form of relief that just based on your paying of taxes, you're going to get residency. It's one of the pieces of evidence in a removal defense case.
Okay. So, in other words, is there like anything that church can do for people that is immigrant, can file for them, help them, or stuff like that? Is there anything like that?
Well, I think that's the question is more, depends on your particular set of facts. Whether the church can be a sponsor for a particular visa, that depends on your particular circumstances.
So, on a 1 to 10 base, what in between that the church can do? What is it? What type? Anything? What is it? What is there?
Well, if you have lawful status, it's much easier for the church to petition an individual, right? But the problem is when you have unlawful status, the options are limited because the way that the law looks at it is that now if the church is going to be petitioning somebody, it's like an employer-based visa. You have to be in current status. Okay?
Explain.
Okay. So the church cannot help somebody who's undocumented right now unless they're a child. Okay? So that's the classic example. Okay? So a child under 21, and I've had those cases where a pastor or some members of the community has said, you know what, we're willing to sponsor a child who's under the age of 21 because they came here, their parents either harmed them, abused them, neglected them, and we're taking that role. It's very limited. That's why it's important to get the information. It's important about the church is that, in the prior administration, immigrants would come to the church for information. And that's where you should come to get information, but also, too, it is a protected sanctuary, okay, under immigration law. You're not going to see ICE raid a church. They can't, okay? So that's really important. There's certain places of worship, hospitals, schools, immigrations cannot go in because those are protected sanctuaries, okay?
Thank you.
Can I just add one thing? That was a great answer, but I just wanted to add that once you're here undocumented, if you overstay your visa, the church cannot break the law. That's why it's easier to sponsor someone from another country than someone who's here who has overstayed their visa, because then that would be the church breaking the law, right?
Yeah.
So that's why the church can't really do much. When I say the church, the conference, the church as a corporation, because if you're here undocumented, you're violating the laws of the country.
Yeah.
So the church cannot then break the laws to sponsor you.
So, and it's important to talk about this topic of fraud, misrepresentation, and all that stuff. You know, you want to be honest with who you're working with, whether it's an immigration attorney, whether you decide to go with another attorney, a notario. I can't dictate that, right? But the point being is you want to be honest and not lie, because everything has to be the truth, okay? Because if you think that immigration's not going to find out, 9 out of 10 times, and I'm telling you this because I go into hearings all the time, they figure it out. They know, okay? They're watching.
I have one last
Go ahead.
question. This person writes, I've been in this country undocumented for over 20 years. I'm a male, no crimes, divorced, and now married. What can be done? What can I do?
Who is he married to?
That's not in the question.
Oh, okay, well, we need to know. So if you're married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder spouse, if you have a U.S. spouse, your spouse should be petitioning you. Now, let's talk about that. What if your spouse says, I don't want to petition you, your marriage is on the rocks? You might be eligible for VAWA. You could be married to somebody, and that person can be abusive to you, believe it or not, and you can get VAWA. I've done it several times. Because sometimes it's really hard to separate, to get divorced. And there's people who are recently divorced and who've been abused by their spouse, and I've gotten VAWA for them. That's the Victims Against Women Act. If your spouse is a green card holder, then you want your spouse to become a U.S. citizen, assuming that, let's say, you've overstayed your visa, because you're going to need a waiver because you've accrued unlawful presence in the United States. So you need a U.S. citizen spouse to cure your unlawful presence. So if you're married to a U.S., let's say you're married to a green card holder and you're undocumented, the green card holder spouse cannot cure your unlawful presence. It has to be a U.S. citizen, okay? So, I have clients that come to me and they say, I just met this lovely person. They have TPS, they have a green card, that's great, love that. But they're not a U.S. citizen. They can't help you right now, okay? The green card holder can help you somewhat, depending on if you still are in status, right? But the point being is that it's really the U.S. citizen, okay, that you need. So that's why we encourage people to become citizens. You could become a citizen and do nothing. You don't have to travel. You don't have to do, you don't even have to go get the passport. Now, there are folks, I should mention, if you came to the United States and you came with your parent, and your parent became a U.S. citizen while you were a child, a minor, that child, some people wonder whether they are already citizens, and they are. So you might want to look at what is called the N-600. That's the certificate of citizenship, because there are folks that their parents become U.S. citizens while they're children, and they don't realize that they're U.S. citizens. And that happened during the prior administration, where I had folks that came in at 6 months, got green cards, and then their parents became citizens. And then when we had the prior administration, this individual feared that he was going to be returned to Afghanistan. And I said, no, my dear, you are a U.S. citizen. It's just that mom and dad never got you a certificate. So here you go. So it's important I really encourage everybody to, if there's no more questions, really encourage everybody to check out, www.uscis.gov. You can also check out the Immigration Court website, which is the Executive Office of Immigration Review. Any questions about immigration, I suggest that you go to those sites first before going on YouTube and getting your legal advice from YouTube. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I have a question. What if you're a grandparent, but you file your daughter, and your daughter had a baby?
Okay.
You paid for the green card, you paid for your granddaughter's papers, and they didn't give it to her. What can you do?
Okay, so if you can just slowly repeat that again.
Okay.
Sorry.
You have a granddaughter.
Yes.
It's my granddaughter.
Okay.
We filed everybody. Everybody got status, but she doesn't. And I have her from 3 months old. I'm raising her up. So they didn't give her. So what can we do for her to get her green card? I'm a citizen.
Yeah, so are you, well, let me talk to you after the presentation because yours is a personal question, okay? So let's talk about that offline, but generally speaking, and generally speaking, look, immigration commits errors, and sometimes you need to obtain an attorney to help you address some of those errors that USCIS has committed or maybe the court. I don't want you to think that once immigration makes a decision, it's the end all be all, okay? Unless they tell you, look, you've been ordered removed and you gotta go, right? I always fight to the last minute. I file motions to stay when people have removal orders. I know this is a little off topic from what you were asking, ma'am, but I just wanna make sure that folks know that, there's ways to address any deficiencies that immigration has done, okay? You can always reapply, okay? And I will address your case offline, but with regards to those of you who have removal orders or fear that you may have a removal order because you don't know, you can always, what is called, request from USCIS, from immigration, your immigration file, okay? And it's what's called doing a Freedom of Information Act, okay? And you can get your entire immigration history, okay? So in case you're wondering, was I ever ordered removed or deported, you can get that information, okay? As far as any errors that have been committed by immigration, names, birth dates, all that stuff, it's really important to get that addressed because later on in the process, it may have implications. So, go ahead. Come on. That's fine. Oh, yeah, it's 30 minutes, yeah. Is there any more questions? Anything else? No, that's it. Okay, I want to thank everybody. I hope I answered all your questions. I will stay for 30 minutes in case anybody has individual personal questions that they want to ask me.
Okay. Thank you, Carolina, for taking the time. Thank you so much. She has business cards, so we'll pass them out to everyone. Penelope, can you pass those out? And so I'll set up in the back because I know we're going to have AY, right? So we'll be in the blue room or one of the rooms in the back. If you have, for more privacy, we'll use pastor's office. So if you have specific private questions, we'll meet in the back and then you can speak with her. She'll be here for the next 30 minutes. Thank you so much for coming. And Pastor, do you have any parting words?
Okay, so just from a pastoral standpoint and from an administrative standpoint, just to tell you thanks for your presentation today. It was awesome. Put your hands together for her. We're grateful. Both our online audience and physical audience, we were blessed, we were informed, and we thank you for guiding us so skillfully through this. All right, so those of you who've asked me questions that I didn't have answers for, I've given to you the person who has the answers, so please go and see her. Okay, so don't come to me anymore to ask me about it while she's here. Okay. All right, so maybe she could use my office. All of you know where the office is, so you could go and talk with her and she could guide you thusly. All right, thank you. As we transition to AY, let's say a word of prayer. Father, thank you so much for this lovely afternoon that we've had. Thank you for the rays of hope that were disseminated over this congregation. And we thank you, God, that you are working in and through our circumstances. We also pray for Congress and those who make decisions. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And so there are no boundaries where you are concerned. And so we ask that you'll open doors, remove and override policy, procedure, politics, and procedure to get your people where they need to go. And even, God, those who have come here and have run out of status, we know, Lord, that with you on our side, then you can help us to navigate that, to get into where we need to go. Thank you for hearing, for answering. We ask special blessing over lawyer Carolina and her team, her office, that you'll bless them, that you'll enlarge their territory, and that you will give them favor as they continue to serve humanity. And pray, God, that no danger or difficulty will come to her business, her life, her family, and those who work there. I pray for special protection from the enemy. And we ask, God, that your presence will always be with them. Thank you for hearing and answering in Jesus' name. Amen.